In 2017, Jay Klaus left his $80,000 a year tech job and started his own creator business to make $29,000. But that's not the end of this story, because by 2023 he was earning over $500,000 a year, even though he'd only just hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. But how? Well, Jay built an online community people pay a yearly subscription to join, which now gives him reoccurring income every year, meaning his revenue's only going one way: up. I wanted to find out how other YouTube creators just like you could do the same thing, so I asked him to reveal how anyone can start a paid community, what he wished he'd known sooner, and I convinced him to share the most powerful thing he ever did to sell out every space and create a waiting list. And we even decided to share a business secret with each other that we've never told anyone before. But first, I wanted to know one thing. So if you were starting from scratch now and you wanted to get to 100 grand using YouTube as fast as you could, what would you do?
The fastest way to make money as a creator is going to be selling your time. And I also think it's a really great strategy for product development anyway, because basically if people are watching you or consuming whatever form of content that you're creating, they hold you in some level of esteem. You know, they respect you in some way and would probably really appreciate the opportunity to work with you, at least some of them. And the great thing about providing services in the beginning is you don't need that many sales to generate meaningful revenue. And you get a front row seat to exactly that person's reaction to the way you present, the way you speak, the results that you deliver. It's just going to be the fastest way for you to earn revenue. And then as you start delivering these services to different clients, you see patterns. You say, okay, it seems like most of my clients want this specific type of outcome. And this opens up the door for what is called productized services, where you basically put on some specific constraints to how the process of working with you looks. You know, you have the same onboarding process for the client every time. You're delivering the same result. It costs the same. It takes the same amount of time. This allows you to take on more clients because the process becomes more efficient. And if you can get that to be really, really efficient, now you can start to have either like a group coaching opportunity or maybe even a digital product on the back end of that. So that's the way I think about the progression: selling services, productized services, and then either group coaching or digital products after that.
The cool thing about selling your time is with things like Calendly, you can literally set it up and be ready to sell in 15 minutes. Like the friction to getting started, there's almost none. Can you just give us a brief rundown of your online community?
It's called The Lab. It's a membership community for professional creators, and it's capped at 200 people. So it's an intentionally limited membership community because I've been involved with a lot of communities in the past, and the magic of online community is the relationships that you build and the closeness that you feel to other people who are like you. And in a lot of ways, as a community grows, it begins to fight itself for that same goal. It's harder to be as close to people. It's harder to feel like you understand the whole of the community. So the point of the membership is, hey, we're going to get 200 professional creators, people who are creating content regularly, together and share what we're working on, what we're learning. And I mean that in the form of like literal experiments. You know, we're all running micro and macro experiments all the time in our businesses to different degrees of like rigor in how we plan them. But we are doing things like saying, hey, I set up this tool to try and sell more digital products last month. Here are the results. And people will record like screen shares, walking through the process that they put in place, through the results that they saw. And so instead of me having to run exactly that experiment myself, I can actually benefit from the person who ran it on their end. And that's the goal here, is to keep this place where we're all pushing towards the edge of, you know, what's working right now for creators and sharing that back and forth.
I think that's probably one of the most underrated tools in business. Recently, I've been doing something similar in a very small group on like WhatsApp, for example. So I will message one of my friends who's got very high turnover and say, can you send me your best converting landing page? Because I want to use it as a template or read it. Yeah, sure thing. And then it'll be like, can you help me with this? Yeah. So we're constantly sharing and experimenting together. And the results of this have been insane. The fact that you've built a purposeful community for this is amazing. So what do you think the best way for someone to start their own would be?
I think what's important is to talk about it a little bit before it happens, because the biggest struggle I see with people is, how do I get my first members, you know? And I think most importantly is you have to design an intentional space that's going to work well for people and fit the format of a membership, and then you have to get people excited about it. So the way I teach people how to get your first members into the community is I have this 2-stage approach to launching this thing. I call it your private opening and then your public launch. So when I launched the lab initially, before I had a sales page, before I had anything, I was going into my emails, into social media and saying, hey, I'm launching a community for professional creators. I don't have anything to show you yet, but if you trust me and you want to join this sight unseen, you can join now for 50% off for life. And so that got like the first 15 or 20 people in. And the great thing about that approach was now the party is in progress and I can actually document what's going on in there to create the sales page that's more compelling for people who are a little bit more on the fence later. So that's like functionally how I would launch it. But I think it's really, really important even before that point to think really intentionally about how you design the membership so that it's something worth joining that people get a lot out of. And again, it also incentivizes you to continue to invest time into it yourself.
Apart from sort of the initial hype cycle, is there anything that you wish you'd known sooner about starting a community?
Yeah, I overpromised a lot of things because I think the tendency when you launch something is you want to make it as compelling as possible. So you start throwing all this stuff out there, like you'll get access to this and this and this. We're going to do a weekly this and a monthly this. And you name all these features to the thing, as opposed to really honing in on what is the purpose of what we're doing here? Like, what is the version of you that will come out the other side because you join this membership? That's actually what's most compelling and what's most important to get right. Because if you get people interested in the outcome that you're promising, the transformation that you're promising, the how doesn't matter as much. You have a lot more leniency and space to experiment with, well, how do I make that happen for people inside the membership? So you don't have to promise these very specific modalities of like, we're gonna have a weekly office hours, we're gonna do a monthly this, we're going to do a quarterly that. When you promise those things up front, now you're on the hook to fulfill them because that's part of why people joined. And I wish I would have been a little bit more specific up front that the community was about shared experimentation, which is what it is now. You know, shared experimentation between creators. At the beginning, I was just like, this is a place for creators. You know, a lot of times people start a membership and they're like, this is a place for like-minded people who care about this. I don't think that's sufficient anymore. I think you need to have a very specific way of engaging so that people know what success looks like, what I can expect, and then you don't need to promise all these features.
I've got a question I think a lot of people will be wondering about building the community. So the internet dream we've all been sold is you build something and then you wake up in the morning and you've made money doing no extra work after you've built it. How much extra time do you have to put in to manage the community?
A ton. Like it's a ton of time. And this is one of the first questions people ask me when I tell them that I have a membership community. It's 70% of my income. They say, how many hours are you putting in every week? I think that's actually like the wrong question because it's not about the number of hours. I could tell you that it's somewhere between 5 to 15. You know, it's probably more around 10 or maybe like 7 to 8. But it's not about the number of hours. Especially in the beginning, what people really want from your community is timeliness and a sense of feeling alive, because we've all been a part of communities that aren't that engaging. They're pretty slow. They're not helpful. You know, if I'm a member and I put the time into making a post because I'm looking for help, that's time I'm investing, that's vulnerability I'm putting forward to share my problems. Not only do I want to get a sufficient return on that effort, you know, somebody helping me with this thing, I also want it to be quick, because if it's not, I'm probably going to get sick of waiting at some point and go elsewhere to try to get the same help. And so now my experience with your membership is this isn't really the best place for me to ask these questions. So in the beginning, as a community builder, you have to be really tapped in all the time so that you can be that first line of defense of, I want to make sure people are having a good experience and they're getting help quickly. That's my opinion. And so for me, it's not about the number of hours on a weekly basis. It's the fact that I have all my notifications on for that community all the time. I'm always aware of what's going on in there because I want to be helpful and I want to be helpful quickly if I can. And sometimes that doesn't even look like me answering the question. Sometimes it's me flagging that question to someone else in the community who I know can be helpful, but might not have seen the post yet.
I hang around with a lot of course creators and people who build software, basically the whole online info business space. And the general consensus is the future is not digital courses anymore. The future is communities and courses combined, and that passive side has maybe seen its heyday.
The pendulum always swings both ways. You know, by the time a couple years pass maybe and everyone leans into community, people are going to say, yeah, but I just want something really efficient. I just want to be able to drop in and like binge through the content quickly, and the digital courses will come back and have their heyday. It's always swinging back and forth, and usually the precursor is oversaturation of low quality thing, you know? So I think what we're really hearing is there are a lot of bad courses or courses that aren't engaging or courses that people aren't getting a lot of value out of. And people on average are getting more value out of communities. And I would say that's true because, yeah, there is like a step of intervention that you can and probably should take in a community when you are face to face with a person who's engaging with your stuff, trying to get better. You can see where they get stuck. You can intervene. In a digital course, you can't really do that. You have to have a rock solid, incredible, tested thing that gets people over humps on their own. And that's a difficult thing to make. And I don't think most people are making that.
People learn in different ways too. So being there to give one-to-one feedback and answer questions for me is key. So with the community, it's at capacity, right?
Yeah, we have a 200 member capacity on the community features within the membership.
What's the most powerful thing you did to generate signups for the community?
What I was really surprised about in marketing the membership, I thought the majority of new members would come from email because that was my biggest channel. We hear all the time that email is one of the best sales channels out there, and it certainly has been for me historically. But I would say about 50% of members in the lab came from Twitter. And the reason is when I would talk about the lab, people in the community would see it and engage with it. And now there's clear visibility to people considering it, what type of people are in this community. A membership is a social product. So to see the social aspect within the membership appear online outside of the membership was really compelling for people to say, oh, I want to spend more time with that person, or I've been following this person for a while. They're in that community. I want to join that space too. So it was really a lot about that. I didn't do any open or closed door launch periods, but there were 2 spikes in signups that I can talk about that I think we can learn something from. The first spike was September of last year because I raised the price $500 per year. And I told people ahead of time, I'm going to be raising the price next week. If you want to join the lab, you can join now at the current price before it goes up next week. So that drove people to make a decision. And a lot of them decided, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now because it's going to be more expensive next week. So it's better for me to do it now. Then February of this year, we had an even bigger spike, and that was because we had a 200 member limit, and we're getting close to that limit. So it became a little bit of a race because there was exclusivity involved there. So in the first situation, there was urgency. There was a reason that people should make a decision right now because the constraints, the decision criteria were changing next week. And in the second time, there was scarcity. There's not going to be any spots left soon. If I want a spot, I've got to get in now. So those are things that typically people can create with launches if they want to. You know, when you do an open and closed door launch of a course or the membership, you are creating urgency because you can join now, but you might not be able to join a week from now. Same with scarcity in some ways. People do that with like bonuses. You know, like, hey, the first 10 people to buy will get this bonus thing. The other great aspect of the model, it's annual only. So everyone purchases a year of membership when they join. And I didn't really want a lot of spikes throughout the year because now in year 2, it feels like monthly recurring revenue. So these are design decisions that, again, you should make before you actually launch the thing because there's a lot that goes into how you design this to be good for the members, how to design it to be retentive, and something that you're excited to put your time into.
So seeing as your community is about sharing, is there anything that you would like to share with us that you maybe haven't told someone before? And I'll tell you something that I haven't told people before, and we'll share some secrets.
Okay, yeah. Here's something that I've learned in doing this. So the second tier of the community, I had 2 tiers when I went out. I had the standard tier, which was like access to everything in the community. And then the second tier was that same access plus a quarterly one-on-one call with me. And I structure that as, here's a SavvyCal link, just a booking link. You can book in 30 or 60-minute increments. You get 2 hours per year, and you can book it whenever you want. We're not going to pre-book it. We're not going to say it has to be quarterly. If you want to do 2 straight hours, that's totally fine. But what I've learned is when you sell a certain amount of access to something, some people will take full advantage of it, and some people won't take advantage of it at all. So there are a lot of people who purchased the VIP membership who didn't use their full 2 hours in their first year of membership. So, you know, I see this also with folks like Brett from Design Joy. He talks about his business and how much he makes on a monthly basis, on a subscription basis. And people think the math doesn't work. Well, the math works because some people pay for the subscription but don't make use of it. So there's not actually a fulfillment cost to the provider.
Okay, so my secret that I'll share with you. So earlier on, we were talking about Twitter as a marketing platform. So I recently did a test. I put a sale on. I've never done a sale before to my email list. And I said there'd be 20% off on a limited amount of spaces in one of my products. And I gave a voucher code. And then I said, I just promoted the same product at the same time on Twitter and the community board. The one without the discount on Twitter and the community board sold more than the email with the discount.
Really?
Yeah. Now the mistake I made, because I literally just rushed this together because I was just like, let's see what happens. I should have done another code or something or tracked it better so I could have seen if it was Twitter or the community board. But what I have noticed is Twitter seems to be a place where you can generate sales by promoting yourself and no one cares. I have never been attacked ever. I don't do that much promotion on Twitter, but when I do, every time I make sales, sometimes it's more like just sharing testimonials, sales. So to me, it just feels like almost like it's your email list in that you do build this community of people who are genuine fans who keep engaging and keep coming back. You can actually get people to buy things without putting them through automation, you know what I mean? Or like a sales call or anything like that. But if you're not using Twitter, you should just check it out.
So I did a similar experiment a couple months ago, and I was trying to influence the number of digital product sales that I had. And I made one change, and it resulted in, I think, like a 3x increase in digital product sales. And it was that I just talked about the products more on Twitter. It's like, oh, you want more sales? Like, just talk about your products more.
That's exactly what I did. I just shared stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, like sales have really shot up this month. What do you think the biggest mistake YouTubers make when it comes to trying to make money online is?
Any game that we're playing, and I look at any of these platforms as a game. I think YouTube's kind of a game, Instagram's a game, Twitter's a game. Any one of these games that you're playing, you're typically modeling after people who have had success in that game. And a lot of the top YouTubers, they seem to have businesses driven by brand deals and sponsorships. And so a lot of YouTubers who are getting started, they look at this and they say, okay, I need to get my channel monetized. That's how I'm going to make money. And that's a way to make money, but I don't think it's the most reliable way to make money. I don't think it's the easiest way to make money. You know, the first video, or one of the first videos I put on the channel, was talking about how last year I made over $300,000 in revenue, and none of it came from YouTube. I think like $16 came from YouTube. So there's a lot of ways to make money as a creator, as a YouTuber, outside of sponsorship. And I really want people to look at that more seriously. You know, we talked about services, we talked about productized services, we talked about digital products. There's also affiliate revenue. There's memberships we talked about. So all of these are ways for you to make a more resilient, dependable revenue model for your business that isn't dependent on being in the partner program and then also having the RPM that you want on your channel.
I think the most shocking thing right now is the invalid traffic issue. Don't know if you've seen this.
I have not seen this.
YouTube are just turning off people's AdSense.
Really?
Because of invalid traffic. This is I know multiple people losing sort of 20, 30 grand a month from this. In fact, most of them, if they didn't have businesses, would have had to have shut down by now. Wow. And there are people having to shut down. So the YouTuber saying invalid traffic, which basically makes it look like you're blasting people at your ads, and they're saying they can't determine what's real or genuine, so they just cut off the ad revenue. The problem is this is every day I'm getting more and more comments about it. I'm seeing more and more people with it. And if you don't have a product, you are completely screwed. Especially if you're one of these channels that's like, imagine if you were making like 10 to 50 grand a month from ad revenue. You've got a big team that are taking half of that. That turns off, you're in the reserves. And actually, from what I've seen is, I've not seen anyone's come back on yet. One of my friends got hit in November last year. Came back on a bit, but his revenue's just sort of really stagnated. So luckily he has courses and content. It's a very small percentage, but it's my goal to never really go above 5% of my turnover. I think at the moment it's 1%, and that makes me happy.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen with that? But it happens, right? It's out of your control. It's never going to happen with email.
And that's why I think about your revenue streams as indirect or direct. And sponsorship revenue, I classify that as indirect revenue. It is not just between you and your audience. There is a third party involved. And when there's a third party involved, that's a variable that can change and it's hard to depend on. When you are selling your services, when you're selling a membership, when you're selling your own products, that is a direct relationship between you and your audience. Your incentives are aligned, and that's going to give you a lot more control and stability in the business.
Check out the links in the description to follow Jay, and if you want to learn how a niche YouTube creator made $30 million, check out this video next because his advice will flip and blow your mind.